Hi, Acadiana. I'm Meteorologist Dave Baker. Happy Tuesday to you. Hopefully you're having a great day so far. It's another hot one out there, and most of us are under a heat advisory for the rest of the day, but there are a couple of cooling showers that are out there this afternoon, and maybe a few of you will catch some of that a little bit later on today. Maybe some of you would like to have that extra afternoon shower, and there might be a few of you who are really getting sick and tired of all of the rain that we've had over the past several weeks. So let's go ahead and get started. Want to look outside locally here real quick. As you can see, all of our roadways, at least here in Lafayette and St. Martin and Acadia Parish, are all pretty much dry right now. We've got a mix of sun and clouds out there. Temperatures have been on the hot side here this afternoon. In fact, we've already climbed back into the upper 80s and low 90s across Acadiana. Here in Lafayette, we are still holding at 92 degrees with a dew point of 76, and that heat index is already at 104. Again, that heat advisory has just now kicked in and will stay in effect until later this evening before those temperatures drop. We could see those heat index values at times getting as high as 110 degrees. But check this out. We do have a couple of cooling showers that are out there here this afternoon. One over northern parts of Vermilion Parish. That one there is going to kind of cross over the southern part of Lafayette Parish. So if you live south of Youngsville or just north of Delcombe and then pushing over to around Coteau there in Iberia Parish, or maybe even southern St. Martin. Looks like a little rain coming down in New Iberia, but that shower appears to be dissipating. And then as we go a little bit farther out, you can see there are some spotty showers here and there. So the daytime heating will be enough to kick off a few widely scattered showers and thunderstorms here and there. Gulf of Mexico satellite as we get started. Still some Saharan dust that's out there, but generally a fair day. A bit of a frontal boundary that's back here off to our east as well, but really fair skies across most of the Gulf of Mexico. A bit hazy out here where that Saharan dust is over the Bay of Campeche and the western part of the Gulf of Mexico. For our friends that are doing some boating or some fishing or working out in the offshore waters, generally 1 to 2 foot seas in the near shore waters, maybe the western waters getting 2 to 3, and then as you get down toward the Texas coast, we're talking about 3 to 4 foot seas. So really a pretty quiet day. Things a little rougher out here over the Caribbean Sea, and then where our tropical wave is here over the Atlantic. We'll watch that as well. And we'll get to what we're talking about of that tropical wave in the Atlantic Ocean here in just a minute. But we want to take a bit of a tour here. The Central American satellite, there's a little bit of a gap in the data there, but there's a low pressure area here, but it's in the upper levels. You can see that counterclockwise spin, but it's not right down at the surface near the water, so we're not going to see any tropical development there. That upper level low will probably continue to roll westward over toward the Yucatan, and you can see a little bit better shot of it there on the Caribbean satellite, the upper level low here. We had an upper level low that was farther to the north, and then our tropical wave, which is very diffused now, moving off toward the west. It had a little bit better concentration in some areas, but it's encountering a lot of dry air and Saharan dust. So the disturbance where it is right now, we're not expecting any tropical development here, at least for day 1, 2, and 3. But as we get into perhaps Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we could see some development anywhere in that orange zone, and the National Hurricane Center putting a medium chance that we'll see some development there. So we're not going to see any named storms. We're not going to see any really even classified as a tropical disturbance probably for a couple of days. So that's why the models are really kind of all over the place right now, and at the same time, we don't have any recon data. There was a possible flight that was going to go today, but it looks like it's been canceled. It looks like they've scheduled another one for tomorrow and for the following day as well. So I do think that the National Hurricane Center will be flying some planes out there, and once we get that data in there, then you'll really start to see the model starting to come into better agreement. But as we look at the entire Atlantic Ocean, our area that we're kind of watching is right about in here. It had a little concentration of some showers and thunderstorms yesterday, but it's very diffused right now as it moves off toward the west-northwest. A couple of decent tropical waves, though, are starting to roll their way off the African continent as well, and those will continue to go ahead and move off toward the west. So let's look at the different models that we have regarding this tropical wave. And as I've said, this is not, it's all it is a tropical wave right now. It doesn't even have a designation as a tropical disturbance. That would be that 96, 97, 98L. I can't remember what number we're on there, but any number that ends with an L on there is going to be an official tropical disturbance. We have not seen that classification happen just yet. So we're just going to look at the Western Atlantic, and I want to take you out a week from today, and we're going to look at 4 different models here. Now remember, the tropical wave is currently about out here, and it is going to start to work its way off toward the west-northwest, and we think we're going to see a little more moisture starting to gather over the Bahamas. So really, if we're going to see this developing into a tropical system, the first signs of development are probably going to be in this area right here. But I did want to point out that the GFS a week from today has a low pressure area emerging over the eastern part of the Gulf of Mexico. This model has pretty much stayed with a tropical system in the Gulf over the past several days. It's kind of the outlier of the other models, but this model does take the tropical system, or a developing tropical system, from the Western Atlantic through the Bahamas, south of Florida, and then this right here is a week from today. And believe it or not, the model actually kind of drifts it off toward the west over toward Texas, and perhaps a landfall somewhere over the central or northern Texas coast, which certainly would not be anything that folks that were dealing with Hurricane Beryl just a little bit about a month ago or so are wanting to see. So the GFS, I'll tell you, is the outlier, and right now it's the one that has something in the Gulf of Mexico. As I said, models are completely out to lunch because at first they don't really know what to forecast with, because this tropical wave hasn't developed into anything. And because it hasn't developed into anything, it's really taking its best guess. As are we as meteorologists. We're kind of looking at what we think could possibly happen, look at the different models, and then kind of go from there. And we really aren't going to know a lot more. And unfortunately, I know this is just a week away from a perhaps middle part of the Gulf or an East Coast kind of a system, so it's not giving a lot of time, at least extended time. So let's think about the way it used to be maybe 20 years ago, where you had 3 or 4 days notice rather than 7 to 10 days notice when it came to tropical systems. What you're looking at here is the Euro model, and again, this is a week from today, and it has a low pressure area here over the Carolinas. Again, it kind of, all of the models are pretty similar, kind of taking it through the Bahamas, but then it's those day 6 and day 7 pattern that is a little bit up in question. But this one does have a low pressure area develop over the Bahamas, kind of work its way maybe pretty close to the coast of Florida, which would not be good for the tropical system. It would be good for us. Unfortunately, it would bring some heavy downpours to parts of Florida. But as long as the center of circulation were to stay over land, we're not going to see a whole lot of development. So let's move on to the Canadian model. And the Canadian model has a low a week from today way up here east of Virginia, the Delmarva, and then moving out to sea. But I will tell you, the initial rounds do take it up around Florida and then kind of work its way off toward the northwest in that particular movement. So the Canadian model is a little bit more similar to what we're seeing with the Euro. And the Icon model, the only thing that's really different between the Icon model and the Euro model, as well as the Canadian models, the Icon and the Canadians seem to run this one a lot faster than the rest of them. But again, here's the Icon model, which is comes from Germany, and that low pressure area is considerably deeper, but notice it's much farther offshore. But I'll tell you, the initial models do take it in that particular direction from beginning to a week from today. So we've got some big time differences, whether it is faster or slower or in a different part of the Atlantic basin. Between 4 different models. So I wanted to show you what the Euro model's upper level pattern looks like a week from today. And what you're going to see is a big ridge of high pressure here and a big upper high here and maybe a little bit of a break in here, which would tend to draw a tropical system in that particular direction. Now the Euro, the Icon, as well as the Canadian model all show a bit of a weak trough here that could possibly pick it up and turn it and keep it away from the Gulf of Mexico. The GFS, on the other hand, is a little bit different. It has a pretty broad ridge of high pressure covering much of the southern parts of the United States. So rather than a turn like this, it would generally make its track a little bit farther toward the west and continue on south of that big ridge of high pressure that's right there. So there's your low, and then it would track off toward the west based on this scenario. So again, the GFS is still the outlier, but what it's doing is it's presenting a stronger ridge of high pressure in the upper levels over the continental United States, which would act as more of a roadblock to a turn toward the Atlantic coast and push it more on a westward track. It also perhaps could be a little bit weaker based on what the millibars that the GFS is forecasting for that particular day. And if I go back there, again, we're talking about maybe 1010, maybe 1008 on the scale. So that's a very weak system compared to what you were seeing with the Icon as well as the Canadian models. So a bit of a difference when it comes to the intensity of this potential tropical system, but also the upper level pattern is a bit different. So as I've said, you got to kind of keep everything open for business here from Louisiana all the way to the East Coast. So let's go ahead and look at the shear, and shear is one of the inhibiting factors. And this tropical wave that's still out here is still working with a lot of dry air, and it is dealing with some wind shear, although the wind shear is considerably lighter than what we've seen over the past couple of weeks or so. And really look at how much it's relaxed here over the Gulf of Mexico and the western portion of the Atlantic Ocean too. Saharan dust and dry air has really been the inhibiting factor for anything developing. Notice it's trying to escape some of that Saharan dust, but there's still a lot of dry air in this particular area, and it still has some areas of dry air that it's going to have to deal with over the next several days, which is the reason why we don't think we would see any development of an actual tropical system here until it gets over by the Bahamas or maybe even a little bit closer to the peninsula of Florida. Water temperatures, on the other hand, are sky high everywhere in the Gulf, the Caribbean, the Western Atlantic, and between the Leeward Islands going all the way to the African coast pretty much, should be able to sustain a tropical system. All of the water temperatures are above 80 degrees, and in some cases you're pushing 85 to 90 in the western part of the Caribbean as well as the southeastern part of the Gulf of Mexico. And not only that, that warm water goes very, very deep. So the tropical cyclone heat potential is considered more of what we would say premium fuel for the western part of the Caribbean. Now, it's not quite as strong here north of the islands and going over toward the Bahamas, but you can see it's pretty high on the scale right about in here. So anything that were to move in that area certainly would have a decent chance for development as long as the atmospheric conditions were favorable as well. So there's a lot of uncertainty, and that's kind of the reason why we tell you to get prepared early in the season. I know I've shown you list after list after list of things that you can gather right now. And the reason we do this is because occasionally you can have a tropical system that's going to be very stubborn to develop. And then if it reaches an area where we have this high tropical cyclone heat potential, you could easily have a minimal type of tropical depression here and then go into a full-blown hurricane somewhere else because it hits in those. And it can do that in a matter of a day or two. So it does sometimes keep people a little bit on edge and also maybe a little more unprepared because there isn't a lot of time to do that. So that's why I say all of the basics that you can shop for now, go ahead and get those while there's no rush and there's plenty of those supplies out there. As I've told you before, hurricane season does start to really kick into high gear. We're almost here at the end of July, so it's not going to be long to where basically the bulk of all of our tropical systems will be happening here between now and the middle part of October. And when you look at where tracks and development of tropical systems have happened over history, this is your hot spot, and this is pretty much where that tropical wave is right now. But you still see a pretty high amount of tropical development in areas that are here over the western part of the Atlantic and even into the Gulf of Mexico. Things are pretty busy as you go into the month of August. So again, here's that list. I'll just go ahead. It wasn't really in my show, but I'm just going to go ahead and pull it up here anyway. These are all of the things that are readily available right now: batteries, flashlights, water, and non-perishable food. Make sure you check your first aid kit. determine how much medicine you have, grab those personal hygiene items and cleaners because those things will be important, especially when you don't have any air conditioning, if indeed we get hit by something. And of course, your IDs, insurance, important papers, make sure you have those locked away in a safe place where you can grab and go, or better yet, save those as digital. Take pictures of everything too. Make sure you got a basic tool set. Entertainment for kids because they are going to get bored. I've raised 4 in the land of hurricanes here, and I can tell you they lose their minds there for a while if you don't have something for them to do, especially things that are not battery operated or need electricity. And of course, your pets. Everybody loves their pets too. Make sure you have all of the supplies they need, not just for a few days of living at home, but in case you have to evacuate as well. So that's kind of a look at what we've got now. I really like it when folks keep up with these each and every day. If you watch Let's Talk Tropics every day, that way you're not surprised where you say, oh, well, these people were saying this and these people were saying that, and then you take 3 or 4 days of a break and then you realize, oh, wait, this thing's really coming, or maybe not coming, or whatever. So make sure you stay with us and check out Let's Talk Tropics if you can. For those are watching live, tell your friends too, please. I would really appreciate it. And they don't have to be here at noon. All of these live streams end up being saved on my channel, Acadiana Weather Today, forever and ever and ever. So that way, if you think that I said one thing and maybe I said another, you can always go back and check my work whenever you want to. So if you wouldn't mind, click the like button on this video and also subscribe to my channel and turn on those notifications too. That way you know when the new version of Let's Talk Tropics drops at noon, or when Acadiana Weather Today hits your screens on YouTube each and every weekday morning between 7:30 and 8 o'clock. I hope all of you have a great day. Try to stay cool. I'm Meteorologist Dave Baker, and I will see you on Wednesday.